With every week that goes by, the Valorant esports scene continues to expand. The Riot developers have teamed up with many tournament organizers through the Valorant Ignition series, and just recently, the PAX Arena Invitational came to a close. In this tournament, Sentinels dominated the competition and won the $10,000 grand prize. Today, we will be going over how Sentinels managed to win the PAX Arena Invitational. So to start out our story, we first need to talk about the roster. And everyone knows the saying, a team is only as strong as their weakest link. And when it comes to Sentinel, there isn't really a weak link. Sentinels signed the majority of their roster on April 28th when they signed Shazam, Sick, Sinatra, and Zombs. They wouldn't go on to complete the roster until Dapper was signed on the 1st of June. Keep in mind that this wouldn't be until after the T1 Nerd Street Gamers Invitational concluded. In this tournament, the 4 players already signed, Shazam, Sick, Sinatra, and Zombs, would play with Dizzy to see if he was a good fit for the final roster spot. And as we now know, there were better options. Anyways, in this tournament, Sentinels performed decently until they lost to Team Brax, which was mainly made up of current T1 players. But even though they lost, this doesn't mean that they were out because the T1 tourney was formatted as a double elimination. So Sentinels moved into the losers bracket to face Team Shroud. They lost this nail-biter 13-9, and this ended their time in the tournament. I'm not going to go more in depth as you're here for the PAX Arena tournament, but I feel like this is a good place to start to fully understand the team. So Sentinels has been playing together as a whole roster since June 1st, and on July 22nd, they started their journey in the PAX Arena Invitational. Real quick, let's talk about how this tournament was formatted. So there were 4 groups of 5 teams, and the top 2 teams from each group advanced to the playoffs. Every match in the tournament was a best of 3, with the finals being the only exception with a best of 5. The playoffs were single elimination, so there would be no second chances like the T1 tournament. So to start off the tourney, Sentinels was placed in Group D along with Cloud9, Complexity, Renegades, and Team Owl. During this part of the tournament, Sentinels shined. They won every single map they played on and ended up topping the group with a record of 4-0. In this group, they faced Cloud9, who is led by Tens, and this is just important for later in the story. Even though Cloud9 did lose to Sentinels, they were still able to be the second highest team in the group, so they also clinched a playoff berth. Joining these 2 teams were TSM and Homeless from Group A, T1 and Team Envy from Group B, then finally Immortals and Gen G from Group C. With the teams ready to start their playoff journey, the bracket was built. In the first round of the playoffs, Sentinels was up against the Canadian team Gen G. Gen G was a solid team even though they never performed amazingly in past tournaments. And coming right out of the gate, Gen G showed that they wanted to change this. The first match would be played on the map Bind, and the Canadians would take this one 13-9. This meant that one more loss would kick Sentinels out of the tournament altogether. And given that Sentinels did win, you already know that this didn't happen. For the second match, Sentinels won on the map Ascent with a score of 13-8. This forced the tiebreaker match, and this would be played on Split. Now, a ton of players hate the map Split, but Sentinels got things done and won 13-9. With this, they continued into the semifinals where they were set to play TSM, who just managed to edge by Team Envy with scores of 14-12 and 13-11. In order to make their way to the grand finals, Sentinels would need to win against a very highly skilled TSM team led by Wardell, a player known for his insane snipes. Sentinels had a huge task but easily managed to dominate the games. The first game played on Ascent went in favors of Sentinel with a score of 13-3. And there's not much you can do after a game like that when you're TSM, so the next game was similar. But TSM did manage to win one more round than that last match to end with a score of 13-4 on the map Bind. Going into this tournament, TSM was one of the favorites, and Sentinels just destroyed them. And it really shows that it's too early to say who the best pro Valorant team is right now. So Sentinels had already secured their spot in the grand finals. But while they were playing their matches, chaos was happening on the other side of the bracket. In the first round of the playoffs, Cloud9 found themselves playing against Immortals, and T1 was set to play Homeless. Now, Cloud9 beat Immortals, and that wasn't too chaotic. But Homeless, a team of randoms, as the casters called them, managed to knock out T1, a huge threat to Sentinels. We will be doing a video on Homeless in the future, so if this is something that interests you, then be sure to subscribe with notifications on. So for the semifinals, Cloud9 would face Homeless for the last spot in the grand finals. And sadly, the Cinderella story came to an end for Homeless as Cloud9 beat them in 2 matches played on both Bind and Ascent. So the grand finals were now set. Cloud9 would be facing Sentinels, and if only the players knew how much action there would be to come. At this point in the tournament, Mitch and Tens were proving to be dominant forces playing for Cloud9, but Sick and the rest of Sentinels were also proving to be a pretty strong force to be reckoned with. For Game 1, Sentinels chose to play on the map Ascent. Keep in mind that this was the same map that Sentinels played on in the group stage against Cloud9, so they knew what to expect. And surprisingly, Cloud9 didn't change their team comp at all for this map. They played with a team comp consisting of Jett, Omen, Sage, Cypher, and Sova. Sentinels had already beaten this team comp with Breach, Sage, Sova, Omen, and Cypher. So they just ended up sticking with the same comp, and I'm sure you've heard the saying, if it ain't broke, then don't fix it. Sentinels was once again able to overtake Cloud9 but by a score of 13-11. But the next map, Haven, would be chosen by Cloud9. Earlier in the tournament, Cloud9 shined on this map, and they showed it once again by beating Sentinels 13-6. So the grand finals were the best of 5, and the score was tied 1-1. The way things were looking, a 5th game might have been needed, and if this was the case, Cloud9 was the team to choose the map. After getting beaten on Haven pretty badly, Sentinels knew they would need to win the next 2 matches to take the tournament, or else they'd have to play Haven in the 5th match. Game 3 was all set up now, and the teams would be playing on the map Bind. This was the second of the 2 maps played in the group stage where Sentinels won, and once again, there was no team comp changes from either side. So in return, Sentinels once again came out on top, this time with a score of 13-11. So not as much of a blowout, but Sentinels was still able to pull through and get the win. With this win, all the pressure shifted over to Cloud9 because if they lost the next game, then they would lose the game and Sentinels would win the championship. For this 4th game, the map was set to split, and right away Sentinels saw an interesting change coming from Tens. Instead of playing his normal agent Jett, he decided to run Viper, who saw many buffs before the tournament originally started. People will think what they want, but this could show that Viper is slowly making her way into the meta. Sadly though, this choice didn't seem to help Cloud9 that much as they lost 13-7 after giving Sentinels an early lead. And one of the best parts about this match is that the final round was a 1v3 clutch by Sick. So Sentinels ended up winning the PAX Arena Valorant Invitational and proving that they are one of the best North American teams right now for the Valorant esports scene. If you enjoyed this video, then be sure to subscribe with notifications on because in the upcoming days, we'll be releasing more content relating to the PAX Arena tournament. And if you have any videos you would like to see me make, then be sure to let me know in the comments down below. And if for some chance you're still watching this video, be sure to comment "sick is sick" in the comments. Thanks so much for watching today's video, and I will see you all in the next one.